You're listening to the Pens Nation radio show on thepensnation.com. Follow us on Twitter at thepensnation.
Well, the Pens definitely didn't have the luck of the Irish this past home and home against the Philadelphia Flyers, dropping both games in pretty convincing fashion, actually, and causing lots of Pens fans to really scratch their heads and weep and moan and cry and complain about it on Twitter, and it was just an awful place yesterday. So if you happen to avoid Twitter this entire weekend, congratulations, you win at life, because it was, like I said, a complete disaster. This is Pens Nation Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at the Pens Nation. I'm Nick. You can follow me at PensNation_Nick. Also joining us tonight is Mish. You can follow him at Hockey Mish. And Casey Johnston with a T. You can follow Casey now at the cool, new and improved Twitter handle, Pens Nation Casey. All one word, making it simple. Now Mish is the outcast. He's the black sheep of the group. Way to go.
I don't think that racial joke is appropriate right here.
It wasn't a racial joke, but you could take it how you want.
Whatever you want to say. I'm going to call Harrison Mooney, and we will see what he says.
Crap, you just turned it into a racial joke. Man, it was so political.
Told you it was a racial joke.
Man, I don't like that. Like I said, Pens, big-time losers this week. Not very lucky. Mish, we've seen this time and time again now from the Pens and Flyers. The Flyers just seem, for whatever reason, have the Pens number, and it shouldn't really be that way, because on paper, skill set wise, everything goes to the Pens, but then the end product seemingly is always the same thing. Pens play frustrated, losing the game. That's just seemingly the script over the past 2-3 years now. Actually, it's kind of making 08 through 09 kind of look like the anomaly. Like those 2 years where the Pens kind of had the Flyers numbers, absolute kind of not really the case. I mean, every year besides those two, the Pens have been owned by the Flyers. Still the same case. What do they have to do to fix this problem?
Yeah, I wish I had an answer for this, but I do not have a clear-cut answer for this. I don't even understand what happened, because my biggest issue with both games, the Penguins weren't awake in the first period of either game. I don't know if that's poor mental preparation. I don't know if it's on the players or if it's on the coaching staff. I don't know if it's just because they were both afternoon games. All I know is the Flyers were ready to go off of the opening faceoff for both games, and the Penguins needed a period, basically, a period and a half in the first game, to figure out what they were doing and how they were going to play. They just simply didn't look ready, and they didn't look tuned up for this. Yeah,
I mean, they sleptwalked most of that first game, actually. I mean, you said about a period and a half, and that, I mean, they really didn't seem to have it click in most of that game. The second game of the series on Sunday, they went down pretty quick, but they didn't kind of hang their heads, I thought, like they kind of did on Saturday's game. They kind of fought back. They made a game out of it until Derek Engelland goes on the power play, and then just whatever. But they really seemed to kind of be getting focused a little more quickly after that first game. Casey, what were your takeaways from this, and what do you think needs to be done to kind of fix this problem?
I mean, I think that both of these games were the Penguins with half of an AHL team playing a mostly healthy Philadelphia Flyers team. And I think that if you looked at the way this game went on both days, you know, the Penguins looked like a team that was playing 2 games in March, and the Flyers looked like a team that were playing a Game 7 in a playoff series. I mean, that's what it looked like to me. The Flyers win back-to-back games. They're still only a point away from being out of the playoffs right now. So, I mean, the Penguins faced a team that were, you know, they were playing for their playoff lives, and it showed. And I don't know how you fix that. You just...
Isn't that how rivalry games are supposed to be, though? Don't most rivalry games turn into Game 7 types where both teams are going crazy just because they hate the other team. I didn't see the hatred from the Penguins, at least to start either game. They picked up on it as they took deficits, but, I mean, it looked like the Flyers were trying to play up to the Penguins, and the Flyers were still interested in beating a rival, and the Penguins were just kind of like, whatever, going through the motions.
At what point do the Pens just get absolutely sick of losing to an inferior team? It's got to be soon, doesn't it, Casey?
I mean, were the Flyers an inferior team yesterday? I mean...
Not yesterday, but they are the inferior team. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, but I mean, compare the two lineups. The Flyers really weren't an inferior team yesterday. The Penguins were. I mean, if you take the season as a whole, they're not, but the past 2 days with those lineup, the Penguins were not the superior team.
Think about if you get rid of the first month of the season. Take away that first month where Giroux had the awful start and the Flyers had the awful start. They already went through a coaching change and everything. How different are these two teams really if you take away that first month?
They're not. I mean,
they're not at all.
There's so much more consistency right now with the Flyers games outside of that first month of the season. Right now, the Penguins are a lot of up and down. You know, like there's a lot of peaks and a lot of valleys. They win 2 against the Caps, and they looked pretty decent doing so. They shut down Ovechkin, did a really good job of containing him and getting a shutout in that series, that home and home. But then 3 days later, you know, it just seems like a completely different team. And here we have the Flyers. Outside of that first month, they've looked pretty much steady, kind of on a nice little steady march throughout the rest of the season, kind of just chipping their way back into the playoff picture. And a lot of people wrote these guys off for dead early on. They're absolutely playing better hockey right now. And actually, the Flyers are probably the worst team for any Eastern Conference kind of team to match up against in the playoffs right now, just because they are playing so well and they're really starting to click.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to add to that.
I was thinking Casey was about to.
I agree with everything you said.
No, I agree with everything you said. No argument here.
Yeah, the only thing that sucks about it is that I'm going to owe Casey a beer.
Well, I'm going to owe you a beer, so we're going to even out.
Let's do that. Let's just go to the bar.
Let's just go
forget
have
about
a
this
beer.
It is St. Patrick's Day.
It is. But after this weekend...
everyone here is Irish.
I'm not. Mish.
You are. The same way I am.
Unbelievable.
Okay, well, I'm Irish, so let's go to a bar.
I'm glad we've started this show much like the Penguins started both of those games.
Yeah, it's just dead in the water to begin with. So there were some promising spots, and I mean, it wasn't all awful. I thought Jeff Zatkoff looked pretty decent coming in relief, and he kind of steadied the ship in the second game. I thought Bylsma should have went to him in that first game instead and then saved Flower to come back in for the second game. But, I mean, it is what it is. Hindsight's 20/20, but I thought Zatkoff looked okay in relief, and one guy that I thought was not surprisingly effective, but rather effective was Robert Bortuzzo. Seemed to be really just getting under the skin of the Flyers. And do we need to see the Pens play more of that style to kind of get under their skin and kind of rattle their cages a bit, or do we just need to stay clear from that, like, altogether, Casey?
I think they need to steer clear from that, but because that doesn't seem to work for them, that's what gets them into trouble, especially against the Flyers. I mean, it's one thing to play a physical game, but the getting under the skin thing, no. They need to stay away from that.
What about you, Mish?
I'm curious. Do you want the style of Bortuzzo stepping up and missing a pass for the first goal against? Or do you want the style of him taking a bad retaliation penalty for the second goal against?
Neither, honestly, but what I would like to see is the Flyers come unglued a little bit, and he was starting to do that, and I thought that was kind of effective. Outside of that, yeah, I mean,
once he's at fault for 2 goals, it's a little too late for Bortuzzo to do much of that.
Yeah, that's true.
I just don't think that's a style that the Penguins will win out in the end. At that point, when you're already down 3-0, it's almost a desperation play, but that's what got the Penguins in trouble to start with. Malkin's stupid penalty, Bortuzzo with a stupid penalty. That's like they can't play that game.
Yeah, Dupre in the first game with the stupid penalty. I think if you can get the guys that, could do that in a smart way, and kind of really just start to not be a liability, but to kind of, like I said, just rattle their cage a little bit. Not guys like Malkin, because that's not what you pay him to do. You can't turn around and punch Ronaldo in the face if you're Evgeny Malkin. And if you're going to do that, make it worthwhile and make it really hard. He didn't, it was so frustrating to see such a talented guy kind of resort to that behavior, and he does it time and time again. But a guy like Bortuzzo, you expect that kind of stuff from. You don't expect it from guys like Malkin. And when guys like Gino do that, it's never a positive result in the outcome. So that's kind of why I'm lobbying a little bit for a guy like Robert Bortuzzo to kind of step up his game, kind of get under their skin a bit, and not be the liability, but really just start to just pester and annoy the crap out of their stars, and hopefully, we see a little different outcome. I don't really think we have a lot of the makeup on this team to be able to do that effectively. That, like you said, without being a liability. So, but they're great at it. The Flyers take that to an art form. How
are they that great at it, or is it also because the Penguins just feed into it?
Both.
I think the Penguins feed into it.
They do feed into it.
I don't think it's all on the Flyers. I think it's partially just the Penguins on this.
Man, I don't know.
The way that these games go, the way the Penguins hate the Flyers, the Flyers don't even have to antagonize the Penguins. They can just come out and play a good hockey game, and it's going to tick the Penguins off to the point where they're going to start doing stupid things.
I think it's the color orange. I think they see that color, and it just boils their blood so badly. What they really need to do is get together with Marc-Andre Fleury's shrink, his sports psychologist, and whenever they see orange, all of a sudden they associate it with daisies and sunshine and happiness, and all of a sudden they're just playing in their own bliss, and they're not kind of thinking about the anger. And I know that sounds stupid, but whatever it takes,
it's going
to
take them too far in the other direction.
Maybe.
The thing that baffles me is we'll see, the Penguins will play, I don't know, let's say Toronto, and there will be a dirty hit, and no one will step up for it, no one will do anything about it, and everyone will be like, oh, why is no one defending Crosby, defending Malkin, defending whoever? Meanwhile, we'll play the Flyers, there will be a perfectly clean hit, and suddenly there are 4 players who want to throw down right there and just end the play. I'll never understand it.
Yeah, it's absolutely what they do. But yeah, it's something that they do need to get away from a little bit if they want to find any success against the Philadelphia Flyers, who, like we said earlier in the show, completely own the Penguins right now. It's not even a close kind of game. It's absolutely an ownership kind of thing. They own the Penguins in console. They own the Penguins at the Wells Fargo Center. It's not even close. So that's going to be one of those demons that the Penguins may need to exercise in the playoffs, where it's super costly, and I'm not so confident they can right now. I'm absolutely just expecting every time they play the Flyers right now that it's going to end in a loss. It sounds depressing, but I don't really have a lot of faith that they are going to play the kind of game that they need to, because they haven't really shown that they can. Now that I'm depressed, can we move on to something more optimistic? Please?
I'm very happy to put this weekend behind us, so
yeah.
Sure, go for it.
Same here. The positive news from the weekend, first of all, the week started great, like we said, against the Capitals. It ended awful against the Flyers, but then we get some good news after the Flyers game, which is ironic, after being in such a downer kind of mood, that the time was right to announce that Kris Letang was going to be practicing again after 6 weeks of having kind of a recovery from a stroke. Beau Bennett would be joining him also. And then this morning, find out that James Neal is practicing after 30 minutes of a concussion. But all of a sudden, the Penguins seem to be getting healthy. And when you look at the timeline for some of the other guys that are injured, Chris Connor's not too far away. Brian Gibbons is back now. Paul Martin shouldn't be all that much longer. What is it? Maybe 2 more weeks, and then we might start hearing some more news on him here too. So the timeline is starting to kind of work in the favor of the Pens, where they're getting some of these guys back. But I think the biggest one's got to be Kris Letang, isn't it, Mish?
I mean, yes, but I don't want to get too excited about it. Just because he's practicing doesn't mean he's coming back right away. I mean, for all of these guys returning to practice, they still all have very different timelines for when they're returning to games. And with Letang, I mean, I'm very excited he's back in practice, and the Penguins are dying to have a player like him in the defensive end right now, which whoever thought I'd be saying that. But I don't expect him to really get into a game for another 2 weeks or so, I would guess, and that's purely a guess. I know Bylsma and several other people have said he still has to clear medical hurdles beyond just being cleared for practice. So it's nice to hear his name, and I'm glad he's healthy and able to skate again and medically cleared for that, but I'm still not expecting a lot for at least a couple more weeks.
Yeah, I mean, not only was he skating out there and he's cleared for full practice, but he, like, from reports earlier today, Josh Yohe was saying he was flying out there. He was absolutely flying, and it was great to see. But I think it is something that Pens fans need to kind of pump the brakes on a bit, isn't it, Casey?
Yeah, I mean, Letang's still talking about how his goal is to play this season. So don't expect him to come back, this week. It's not going to happen. But like Mish said, I agree. I'm just happy he's healthy and he's able to practice.
Well, he's made worse decisions, I guess. But this would be a very bad one if he comes back way too early. But like I said, we've seen bad decisions from Kris Letang in the past before, and that's not a complete slam on him. It's just kind of funny. It's in jest. Yeah, Mish, you mentioned that his kind of game is something that the Pens desperately need right now. I could see both he and Paul Martin coming back at the same time, and all of a sudden the Pens start to click. But will that be enough to kind of go into the playoffs, those two guys alone?
I think those two alone will get them through the first 2 rounds. I mean, obviously depending on matchup, but if everything played out exactly as everyone would expect, I think those two on their own make this team a conference finals team at the very least. Going back to the Philly series, which I know we all hate, but not series, but this little back-to-back. What were your thoughts on, for both of you, sitting Dupre in the second game?
Thought he deserved it. Had an awful first game, taking a penalty that led to a goal. He just hasn't been... He's had some good games, but he hasn't been the model of consistency. And I think we're starting to see some of what Penguins, like coaching staff and development, have seen in a guy like Simone Dupre right now. Like, he's up and he's down, and it's costly, and they need to eliminate that kind of thing from his game if he wants to kind of further his career at the NHL level. He hasn't shown that he can really do it. Actually, he's had a pretty up and down stretch. Going back to the outdoor game, he just complete mud. I've not seen a lot outside of maybe the Caps series for him. I thought he had a decent Caps home and home, but outside of that, it's been pretty rough.
Casey, I need your help a little bit on this one. Would you say a Corsi 4 percentage of 77.3% is good?
Is that the praise? That's very good.
Yeah.
That's the praise on Saturday. He led the team with 5 shots and had a Corsi 4 percentage of 77.3%. On a team that can't move the puck out of the defensive zone, it seemed like he was one of the only ones that could do it, and I will fully agree that penalty was stupid that he took, but I thought it was a huge disservice to the team to take him out when they needed him to help the offense out.
Yeah, completely agree. I don't know. I mean, if you're people say that Dupre has a bad attitude, and just looking at the way that he gets handled sometimes, I don't blame him. It's got to be really frustrating to feel like you're not allowed to make a mistake, and if you do make a mistake, it's going to cost you playing time. I don't know what Dupre can do at this point. I don't know how he's supposed to get consistency when he can't string together games.
Yeah, but he's not the only one at the same time. I mean, like even going back to a couple months ago when we had Yohe on the show at your house for the Rib Fest, he was saying basically a lot of players on the defensive side, and I think he was quoting Lovejoy whenever he was talking about this, was like if you make a mistake in this system, it's in the back of your net. Like no ands, ifs, or buts about it. And then, like for a guy like Dupre to have an attitude, kind of a bad attitude where they don't like that, like that's just kind of coupling on top of that, and so they're not going to really be on your side if that's the case. So whether you're a positive Corsi or a negative Corsi, unless your name is like Sidney Crosby or Evgeny Malkin or James Neal, you may find, or Derek England, you may find yourself sitting out a game.
I was just about to say, that goes for most of the team, actually, except for maybe like Bortuzzo and Dupre.
Yeah.
And I
it
think
feels like they really get the short end of the stick. But I don't think that's their problem as much as it is coaching's problem.
Oh, I agree. I think
there's
it's
definite
one of the
favorites
things
on
I'm
the
pointing
team.
out is I don't understand why you sit one of your better players.
I'm kind of curious what his bad attitude is. I mean, I know that we don't get to be around him at all, but anytime they show him on TV, he's always smiling. He always looks like he's happy to just be playing hockey. So I'm kind of curious what he's doing.
In the game.
Yeah, I'm curious what he's doing off camera to, make people say he has a bad attitude. That was directed at no one in particular.
Yeah, sorry for bringing up Dupre and just moving the whole thing backwards, but that, looking through the stats, that was bothering me because I saw I led the team with 5 shots, and then I don't look up Corsi a lot. I generally, we all know I'm not big on advanced stats, but when I saw that, him leading the team and by a lot, I was like, I understand a bad penalty deserves a benching, but when your team just lost 4-0 and you have one player pushing the puck positively in that way, you don't bench that player.
Now,
There are times for lessons. I'm not sure that was the time.
All right, now if we take the Corsi stat out of this whole equation for Dupre, based off what you'd seen from him, did he pass the eye test in Saturday's game?
For Saturday, I had him with 3 positive marks and 3 negative marks. So flat out even for me.
That's pretty much a bright spot for that game, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, it kind of matches up a little bit with that, but that Corsi number, that's a pretty ridiculous percentage to be that positive, isn't it? But it didn't really seem to translate that much. I would never expect
to see it.
No. Going to another guy, we found out Thursday that James Neal was diagnosed with a concussion. Practiced this morning. Kind of, the alarmist in me, the conspiracy theorist in me, makes me wonder if they were just giving him a break for the Philly game. Didn't want him to get hurt because, you know how James Neal plays against the Philadelphia Flyers. He just can't help himself. A lot like Evgeny Malkin can't help himself. But, if he wasn't feeling all the greatest, maybe hold him out from that game. Did you guys get the sense that, maybe they just wanted to protect an asset? Or is that just completely berserk?
I honestly don't trust Neal to diagnose himself, and though he says he felt great today, I'm not even sure we will see him tomorrow, honestly. I want to wait and see what the doctors say on him first.
What about you, Case?
No, I think if they were just giving him a rest, they would say that. I don't think they had to make up a malady for him to sit out the game.
All right. Yeah, I don't think so either, but it's fun to play conspiracy theorists sometimes. Moving on to Beau Bennett. Bennett is now fully engaged in practicing. I think this is the guy that we may see the soonest in this lineup coming back. Had wrist surgery in November, and now has had a couple setbacks, and now is finally looking like he may be getting into game shape. First practice, he's been skating off and on throughout this whole thing, kind of keeping in shape. But today was his first full practice with the team where he could take contact and everything. It's looking like he's going to resume kind of game situations soon. Mish, where do you pencil him in your lineup right now? Stempaniak's playing decently well with Crosby. Do you put him on that top line and move Stempaniak down to the third line, or what do you do here?
Bennett's been out for a long time. It's been, mid-November? He's going to need time to get back into, actual game shape, playing through the games. I would start him, honestly, third or fourth line and let him work his way up if he manages to work his way up. I still don't really understand what the ceiling is for Bennett this season necessarily. Again, with a lot of missed time, and we've never really seen him consistently in the lineup. So, I mean, I think ideally to me right now, he probably fits as a third-line wing.
Casey, where do you think he fits better? Does he fit better alongside Brandon Sutter, or does he fit better alongside, right now, Sidney Crosby?
I mean, he's a complete wild card right now. It depends on, what Beau Bennett we see. It's hard to gauge when he's only played 12 games this season. He's only played 38 games in his career. He has the skill set. He's shown that he can, play the way that Sidney Crosby needs him to play. If he doesn't have his timing back yet, I think he could also slot against next to Brandon Sutter because, he's done that in the past and he didn't look out of place. So, I mean, ideally, in a perfect world, you'd want him next to Sidney Crosby. Realistically, I think you're going to see him next to Brandon Sutter for a few games at least.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. I think both you guys, hit the nail on the head here. I think they are going to probably start him off a little slowly. Not so much on the fourth line, but over there with Sutter and them on the third. Kind of limit his minutes, get him into game shape, get him into some repetition, and kind of work on his timing a bit. But it's going to take a little while. But at the same time, there's a lot of games here in the next 13 days. I think they play 8 games in the next 13 days. So it could be something where all of a sudden, just like that, he's up on the top line because, 3 or 4 games in, it's going to be like a week. And, maybe you start seeing him skating on those top 2 lines somewhere soon. One of the guys I thought didn't play a great game against the Flyers was Lee Stempniak. I thought he looked completely soft. I thought he looked out of place at times, too. Did either of you guys get the sense that he probably played his worst games as a Penguin against the Flyers?
Go ahead, Casey.
No, I've got nothing there. I'm sorry.
I noted at least in Sunday's game. Nice job, Casey. I'm glad I threw it over to you. In Sunday's game, at least, after that big hit that he took from Hartnell, the one where Bortuzzo took the penalty, after that, he shied away from contact. He wasn't going in the front of the net as much as he did in the week that we had seen him, at least. Hopefully that was just kind of an in-game thing. But, yeah, I mean, I agree with your assessment. He looked a little skittish, I guess, compared to previous games. So hopefully it's just a game-to-game thing. But, I mean, I've seen scouting reports about him that have also said, like, he's not the type to necessarily get into it a lot. We'll see what happens with him, I guess.
I don't know. I thought he took a shot to the head against Hartnell. Maybe he was just stung the whole game.
Went all King Hippo on him. Tyson's punch out. All right. One last segment before we get going here. Playoff matchup Mondays, where we're going to take a look at the current seedings in the NHL and kind of give our thoughts on who would win the series kind of thing. All right. So we're going to start out west with Dallas and St. Louis. Right now, St. Louis leads the season series 2-1. Mish, who do you have winning in that series?
St. Louis, not even a question to me. St. Louis, probably the best or second best team in the West right now. I just don't think Dallas has the firepower to get through St. Louis's defense. And honestly, I think St. Louis would run away with that series.
All right. Casey?
I completely agree. Not even going to give Dallas consideration there.
So sad for Dallas. Not even with Tim Thomas now?
Yeah, that's not helping their case necessarily.
No, not at all.
All right. So, how many games?
I would say
give
that
Dallas
enough.
enough. Yeah, I was going to say I'll give Dallas enough credit to say that they will win one game.
All right. Mish?
I'm going with 5 as well.
All right. So I'm going to keep track of these, and we'll post these later on whenever it doesn't really matter. All right, Chicago versus Colorado. Right now, Colorado's leading the season series 4-1, which is a bit surprising. Mish, who do you got?
Yeah, this is a tough one because the season series doesn't make logical sense to me.
It doesn't.
They've all been relatively close games, except for, Colorado has one blowout, Chicago has one blowout, and then it's all been close games since then. I would think just because of playoff experience and just that overall factor of Colorado would really be in their first playoffs in a while, and Chicago has clearly been there and gotten it done twice in the past 4 years. I'd have to pick Chicago, but I think it might be like a 6-game series just because Colorado's too young and stupid to know better.
All right, Casey.
I'm going to go out on a huge limb here, and I'm going to say Colorado's going to take this one. They've been surprising people all season long, so why should they stop there? Chicago's played a lot of hockey the last couple years. They've got the Stanley Cup hangover. They had a lot of guys in the Olympics. They're not very rested. I'm going to go Colorado in 6.
Did you just swear? All right.
No.
It sure sounded like it. All right, Minnesota and Anaheim, Mish.
It's really hard for me to pick Bruce Boudreau because I don't trust him in the playoffs. But Anaheim
right now,
just looks like
season
such
series,
a complete team.
Season series, Anaheim leads 2-1. If that's any help.
That doesn't make a difference to me. Boudreau in the
so.
playoffs is still a scary pick, but I would go with Anaheim just because I think they're too well-rounded of a team to lose to Minnesota.
How many?
I'll say 6 on that one.
Casey.
Anaheim in 5.
All right.
And I trust Bruce Boudreau more than Mish does.
Yeah, I do too. I think he's a little different this year, and there's a lot of question marks still about Minnesota, so we'll see. LA versus San Jose. This is going to be a very fun series, I would think, if this is what ends up being. Mish, what do you got?
You know who I'm picking. I'm picking the Kings.
All right, how many games?
The season series is 3-0-1 for the Kings. LA just knows how to get it done in the playoffs. Quick knows how to get it done in the playoffs. They knocked out San Jose last year. They've shown that they're really good against repeat teams, as the Blues can attest to. I'd pick them over San Jose, though I think this would go 7.
Wow. Casey.
I'm also picking LA, and 7 sounds good to me.
You guys are so alike. Moving over to the East, we've got Boston at the New York Rangers. Mish, who do you see coming out on top in this series?
This could be... the season series is 3-0 Boston.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a scary series just because, when Lundqvist is on, he's ridiculous. And the Rangers have shown flashes of being a much better team than their record suggests. But Boston's just such a complete team. They're really the only other team I fear in the East. So I'll go Boston in 6.
Casey.
I'm going to go Boston in 5. Everything Mish said, plus, Boston's just a difficult team to play with. They're a physical team. They're going to come out there. They're going to play hard along the boards. They're going to, they're going to kill the Rangers in the dirty areas. So, yeah, Boston. What did I say? 5?
Boston in 5, yep.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that.
Here's one I think it's got the potential to be the most fun in the entire playoffs right now. Maybe outside of the LA and San Jose, but maybe the most fun in the East is Toronto and Montreal. Season series all knotted up at 2. Both teams really dislike each other, so that's got all the makings of a good first round series. Not to mention Toronto trying to exercise some demons from last year's first round series. So who do you got here, Mish?
This is a tough one because I want to say Montreal learned a lot from their exit last year to Ottawa. I also want to say Toronto learned a lot from their exit last year to Boston. At that point, I probably put it on goaltending, and honestly, I just like Carey Price a little bit better. Sorry, Toronto, but I would pick the Habs in 7.
Casey, who you got?
I would pick the Habs, but I'm thinking more like 5.
Casey, you like these 5-game series. All right. Tampa Bay and Pittsburgh would be the matchup right now. Mish, who you have?
I have PTSD. That's what I have from playing Tampa Bay. Hopefully it doesn't go like the last time we played Tampa, but honestly, I think Tampa's kind of a team that's going to fall into disarray heading towards the playoffs. Ben Bishop has had one hell of a season, but I don't think Tampa can match up to Pittsburgh at all. I would pick the Pens in 5.
Casey.
Um,
It sounds like you're about to say something really unpopular.
If the Penguins
feels
go
like.
into the playoffs with the lineup they have right now, I'm probably going to have to go Tampa Bay in 6.
Get out of here. You're not on the site anymore.
I love the fact that you got the balls.
The playoffs with the lineup they have right now, where Crosby's line mates are Lee Stempniak and Tanner Glass. I mean, yeah, sorry. I love the Pens. I'm a huge Pens fan, but being realistic, I mean, I don't think the Pens get out of the first round with that lineup. Now,
against Tampa, they do.
If by the time the playoffs come around and they have James Neal back and they have Kris Letang back and Paul Martin, then yeah, I'll go Pens in 5. But
and if they trade for Ryan Kessler and get Jerome McGinley back, they'll win it in 4.
What happened just now? All of a sudden, we've moved the trade deadline.
I had a different opinion than Mish, and he did not care for it.
No, I decided to mock him.
Because mocking is so mature. All right, Columbus and Philadelphia. Right now, the season series is in favor of the Columbus Blue Jackets. This could also be a very fun series because there's a little bit of history here. There are some players on Philly now, like Steve Mason, and also I guess they've got the Columbus draft pick and Sean Couturier.
It's Mason versus Bobrovsky. What more could you ever want in a goaltending matchup?
This could be a fun series. Really, it could be. Mish, who would you have coming out on top in this series?
This is tough because goaltending-wise, I obviously want to pick Bobrovsky, but I do think Philly is the better, more well-rounded team. I'd probably say 7-game series, which I'm having a tough time actually picking this because 7-game series, I always want to pick the best goaltender in the end. So, You know what? I'll say Columbus in 7.
Columbus, nice. Casey, who do you got?
That's a tough one. Probably I'm going to have to go Philadelphia in 6. They're entering the playoffs. It looks like they're going to have a lot of momentum going in. You know, they're scoring a lot of goals right now. They've really dragged themselves up from the basement that they were in the beginning of the season. So, yeah, Philly in 6.
Yeah, if you look at both these teams right now, they're both playing pretty good hockey. Philadelphia is playing on maybe a little bit more of an emotional high, beating a rival in the Pens in the past 2 games, but they're 7-2-1. Philadelphia is in their last 10. Columbus 6-3-1. They're kind of a quiet 6-3-1, but that's not too shabby right now. Both teams are kind of entering, if the playoffs started today, as hot as they played pretty much all year. So that could be a real fun matchup. Add to the intangibles of that goaltending matchup. That could just be kind of like a really fun game. I think the 2 match up really well. I do think Philadelphia probably would have the edge here just because they got a little more experience. They kind of got it a bit more together. But I could see that going 6 or 7 games just like you guys too. A little bit of fun. We'll kind of look back and see how these all change throughout the rest of the season. But who knows? We'll try to do something like this every Monday. And the matchups are all shifting. They're all changing. Right now, a few of the teams that, are still making a kind of a bid for it. Detroit's still kind of hanging around. Washington is still kind of hanging around. Although they're trending down right now. They're not playing like teams that need to kind of really play well to get in. They're playing like teams that are just about to give up. So who knows how it's really going to shake out. But as this shakes out, we'll kind of keep working through these playoff matchups and see kind of how it will work out. It's kind of a little fun what if to do. So we'll go from there. All right. Anything else before we sign off tonight, guys? You guys want to yell, scream, just vent? No?
Mish mocked me, and I don't like that.
Well,
That was my vent.
we'll kick Mish off the air. Bye, Mish.
Bye, Mish.
Let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here. Let's get out of here.
Just as I thought it was going all right, I found out I'm wrong when I thought it was right. It's always the same, it's just a shame, that's all. I could say day and you'd say night. Tell me it's black when I know that it's white. Always the same, it's just a shame, and that's all. I could leave, but I won't go, though my heart might tell me so. I can't feel a thing from my head down to my toes. But why does it always seem to be me looking at you and you looking at me? It's always the same, it's just a shame, that's all. Turning me on, turning me off, making me feel like I want too much. Living with you is just putting me through it all the time.
Sorry, Mish.